Sir takes over. In his book, Imagining Communities, Benedict Anderson says that for any nation, before it becomes a social political reality, it has to be imagined. And it is only upon the imagination of a nation that you ultimately get a nation as such. Now, even though imagination itself is something very private, one has to also necessarily realize that imaginative processes and imagination itself are governed by, are dictated by the things, representations that are around us. And though there are many kinds of representations that we see, one major influence on imaginative processes are films. Because all of us watch films, right? And Bollywood is something that has attracted us for ages, is perhaps going to keep on attracting us till the time that it absolutely decimates itself or whatever compulsions that it finds itself under. But in any case, because Bollywood is a mass, at the end of the day, a mass projection, because it gets so many people coming, it has always managed to guide, it has always managed to both capture and release all of these imaginative processes, and in the process also somehow build the history of the nation that we find ourselves in. So, in the same way, we have Professor Arun with us. For those who do not know, I don't think there is anyone who does not know. One who has a book.
Yeah, he wants to see Nami Kafi.
Who has this book titled Contemporary India as Captured by Bollywood, which was published in 2022. And this is a book which is not a film review. He's not reviewing films. He's actually looking at the ways by the history of the nation has not just been represented but also perhaps built, because histories are built. We have historians amongst us. By films, by Bollywood films. This thing, it actually started when Arun sir, Kuldeep sir and I were just sitting at one of the tables and throwing down ideas and what to do and what not to do. At which point, all of us just started talking about films, without any knowledge that all of us actually work with films. When Kuldeep sir told me I was about to come, so I went back home, got the book. I have not completed it, but I have read some chunk of it. And then we decided that we might as well get back the research working on with Arun sir's talk on films, because again, it's approachable, it's something that everyone is interested in and can have a pan-dimensional, interdisciplinary approach at it. So I will not take any more time. Welcome Arun sir and hand over the session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. To be very honest, I have two set of people to thank for this book. One is my father, who used to write in magazines as a city. So he used to save money, pocket money, and instead of going to school and college, using that money on bus, etc., he used to walk so that he would have enough money to go and watch movies. And then after watching the movie, he would write a summary and a sort of opinion about the movie to local magazines, and we used to get published. So in my years as a teenager, one of the best times was sitting with him and watching the Friday movie on Doordarshan. And such times like elections, when they used to show movies so that results would come in between interlace with this. So for those born after 2000, you'll find this surprising. The day election में कहीं कुछ बीटी मिलता था और ऊपर से रिजल्ट के 3 दिन या 4 दिन पूरे रिजल्ट्स start in the morning and by evening you know which party has won or not. But in those days, ballots were open, the size of ballots would be big, as well as newspapers, and it used to take 3 to 4 days to finish the order. And in the process, obviously, there would be movies shown so that people could sit and wait for the results to come. So it was that time that I used to watch movies. And secondly, a set of students of electronics, while teaching, they told me they never saw children. Surely was a movie that you should all know that 1975 was one of the biggest hits of Hindi Bollywood movies. And this set of students were in somewhere about 2014, Jasmine and Shiva, 2014-15, and they had not watched this movie. So going back, I realized that they are missing out a lot, not just on entertainment value, but it also reflected that they did not know much about their own country. Right? And the argument why they did not know about their own country is because history can be recorded in many ways. History recorded will make it better. So from archaeology to different texts, there are far better ways of doing it. But then if you look between lines and if you join dotted lines of Bollywood movie, it's not just about hero heroine running around the street or Romeo and Juliet patrol again and again. There is a certain amount of history. And for a keen observer, there is a certain amount of geography to be learned also. Because if you look at it, 1967, there were movies like Love in Tokyo and Evening in Paris, etc. Around the world in $8. Right? Movies which showed different locations around the world. And for a population of India who would never travel abroad, that became a wonderful way to see Eiffel Tower, to see bullet train, etc. etc. No, sorry, not bullet train. Bullet train, but the point is they could see Japan, they could see New York City, etc. etc. And remember, 67, TV was not a household equipment, right? In fact, if you wanted to watch TV in India in those days, TV was only available for 2 hours in community centers, right? And that too around 1967. TV only became a household item in Asian Games 1982, right? And that too, you would find it in music. You had to have a license to have it, right? So the registration paper for your car is understood, but to have a TV, today you find it in various, you needed to have a license. और उस लाइसेंस का ₹5 का एनुअल फीस होता था जो पार्लियामेंट स्ट्रीट में आपको जमा करना होगा. You have to go and right on your own. And there was a passport which would identify that you have paid for your TV for ownership of your TV. So, and again, like I'm saying, that there was these history, these things that you won't know if you were born after what 1990, 2000, etc. So the idea was that movies can teach you something, and in that context, I started during the pandemic to sort of see whether some sort of storyline and timeline can be associated with Bollywood movies. And what I saw was that every 15 years, the storyline changed, and the storyline actually represented the social changes that were taking place in the country. How people were behaving, how governments were behaving, etc. etc. And to complete my analysis, I decided just do it from 1945 onwards. So 1945, the first thing that you realize is India is struggling to gain independence. India is not a very well-off country, very poor. And something that historians will tell you, but you might have forgotten, Indian independence struggle was not just about getting the British out of the country. It was also about bringing about a social change, right? Because India was invested in the military system, right? The farmers were poor. We did not have an irrigation system to talk about, right? And there was no investment from the government, especially considering the British government, to make the people rich. So the question came as to, if we win independence, what are we going to replace? Are we going to replace a white man with a brown man who's going to cheat us again? So in that context, two things came about. One was that we had to instill some sort of feeling of nationalism among the people so that they will believe that they are good and they will agree that let's fight to get the British out. And in this respect, the first thing that had to be attacked was the British argument that we brought in judiciary to we introduced fair play. If you do not understand this concept, you just have to look at Ladakh. Ladakh में last notice जब 6 पड़ता है, तो you see the movie, they show that the English empire was so decent enough that he accepted that it was his 6. Right? It was as if he did a favor to us by accepting that the ball passed the boundary without touching the ground or the fielder to a fair catch or do not aim fair catch, etc. So to do that, right, you have to show that there was a judiciary or there was a level play even before the British came. And Saramati in his film Kukar tried to show that, where the storyline is that Noor Jahan, to entertain herself, shoots an arrow through her window, kills the dhobi, right? And the dhobi's wife is brought in by a minister, Saramati minister, and argues that she's the queen, so she cannot have a different justice system. She has to be punished, right? Blood for blood, eye for eye. Jahangir ka insaf hai to wo karna. So this leads to a very interesting cinematic argument and storyline, etc. And the story essentially was to argue that we knew how to keep our own justice system. This law was made to look as if it was against the Japanese government. It was actually directed to the Britishers that it's time that we get out of the movie India is ours. So the whole idea was there were movies that were being made to instill nationalism in Indian population so that they would be ready to fight the British. Number one. This included films like Sikandar and Forest, or rather Sikandar, Saramati's movie Sikandar, which was about how Forrest imagined to be treated like a king when he was defeated. And other movies by Saramati, Minerva movies were making those movies. He was making those movies under that time. After that came means that okay, there is caste discrimination. We want to do away with caste discrimination. There is a problem with the judiciary system, etc., etc. And Bollywood did respond. If you look at Vishankaran's movie, Manus, right, or that was in Marathi, but it was also translated in Hindi, Arun. It talks about the caste system and sort of is also talking about a lady from a bad society being accepted by a policeman and problems leading, etc., etc. So again, there was a situation that Bollywood was also responding to the social requirement or demand for a social change if we are to become independent and to become a self-governing region. So, as you can see, 1939 to 1947, the build-up to independence, movies did respond to this. And after 1947 came the storyline of nation building. Nation building was represented, or rather the Bollywood made Surinder the face, or rather made Surinder the face of nation building after independence. And that's apt also. Because Surinder himself was a victim of partition, had come from Pakistan, was struggling, right? And he was good looking, obviously, and he went on to become a star. And in context, if you look at again Saramati's movie Sheesh Mahal, it's about a very rich family, a person from a very rich family, who cannot realize or understand that our Jamindari or Nawab का जो title है वो सब जाएगा, right? Now you are in an independent democratic country and you have to live with that aspect. That you are now not privileged, you are just one among the many people in the country. So Like that, Sunil's movie started a song, not in Shishwar. I just kept the thing. About that, I'm sure those who watch Doordarshan or have the habit of looking at old movies would have gone and seen it. That is from Hindustan in 1960s, right? Chodo Kal Ki Baat Ho Raha Hai. So same thing. He's in a family. He's an engineer. His parents keep on quitting. He worked etc. etc. And he's saying, forget it. That's different. And this song has images of Taj Mahal, Ganganaru Dam, etc. Which actually was addressing Nehru's temples of modern India. So yes, you have Taj Mahal, Shahjahan ne banaya, one of the wonders of the planet. And now we are going to make new things. So, Chodo Kal Ki Baat, right? Forget it. We made that. We have a nation to build. We have to build. So this keeps on continuing. Sunil, this again and again used, right, as a representation of New India, the face of New India. So much so that you can realize this in his characterization in Sujata, a movie where he is a Brahmin boy from a well-to-do family. Sujata was in 1959, well-to-do family, and he falls in love with a girl who's from a lower class. To be specifically correct, from a Nobi class. Now, this is 1959, 1960, so you can well understand it's not going to be so easy. But the good thing about it is, Sulekha actually was representing as the mother. And for the first time in Hindi movie, where the mother usually takes a very docile stand, right? She takes a stand that हमारा ही घर में फली हुई बेटी है, so जानता क्या होता है, right? So not just Sunil, but Sulekha also play a very important role. Now why I say this is very important? See, if you look at how Indian women were represented in Bollywood, you will see how it has changed with years. 47, Leena James, always the suffering mother, always in bed with TV, always the hero tries to do work for the family. इनमें रामायण की तरह एक धोबी आता है, पड़ोसी आता है, कुछ चुगली हो जाता है, चुगली के बाद रीना जी doesn't ask the son कि ये सही है या गलत, she is throwing off, गंदा बेटा है, बात नहीं, समाज में गंदा था. Now Sujata Sulekha obviously plays a different role. Then comes 1970. When Nepomoroi doesn't lie on a charpite, right? She gets off the bed and goes to a construction site because she has 2 children to look after. Right? Totally different one. She is now not an Abla. She is not a woman who's docile sitting at home. She is ready to go out, fight for her kids. So in the process, right, at the end, what happens is when Amira Bhajan is a smuggler, she takes side with the book, right? So again, she's able to take a stand, deviating from Leena James. So I'm telling you, I'm marking Leena James as the starting point of 1947. I'm moving away from Leena James and see how it is developed. Jodha in Mughal Assam is shown when Akbar goes to battle and asks Jodha to put a tilak before the battle. As a mother, there is a conflict, but she's shown that she is a wife, so she will do her duty as wife first. Right? So again, as you can see, there is a deviation now from 1947. As shown to be, the woman is becoming stronger, independent and in a position to take a decision. There is in an interview in Mother India where Nugget again loves her children, works for her children, theatre में जाती है और हॉक्स के जगह वो काम करती है, काउंटर म्यूजिक की. But when Sunil picks up a girl from the village after becoming a boy to take his revenge, she shoots her own son. Explaining कि गांव का इज्जत ज़्यादा जरूरी है, right and wrong में she is not ready to go with her son. Now come to 1989-1990, Salman Khan's big popular movie मैंने प्यार किया. There is a scene where Salman says he's going to marry Kagishu or he wants to marry Kagishu, and the father doesn't like it. The father keeps on telling him why it's a bad decision. This rich man forgets for area. And in the process, he turns to his wife and says, why don't you explain something? Why don't you say something? And what Vimal Abu does is she takes off her congan and says, "Babe, go for it." Now it's an open conflict with the husband. It's a stand which is against the husband. So from Jodha, right, who when it comes to a conflict between husband and wife, is husband. Sorry, husband and son is husband. To Vimal Abu in 89. If it's husband and son, right and wrong, I go with the right. Right? So that is the change that has been documented and that has also been reflected in urban, many urban middle class India. Right? You ask your grandmother, right, and you see your mother, and you see your ability to take a decision. It's totally different. And Bollywood has recorded, right? And so, just like this representation of women being represented, other things have been also represented. So, if you look at it, 1945 to 1960 was Nehru's heydays. There was that time of affairs. And initially, people were working towards making a country. People wanted to make a country. So, in the process, Nehru's idea of socialism was also being represented. Though we got it, right? The idea is that the state has to do something, otherwise the farmer is in a debt trap. Right? So, from the bigger Jameen, there were other storylines also. All representing the socialist idea. And people like Bimal Roy, right, K. Abbas, they all were contributing to this socialist idea. So, the idea was कि अगर बस से आ गया गाँव में तो हम घोड़ेगाड़ी वाले का. It was a question that if technology is pumped, what happens to people who are not waiting for technology? That Nehru liked the story very much because Nehru was a socialist, but he also wanted to embrace technology. And here was a film by B.R. Chopra which asked the question that can you have them go hand in hand or will you have trouble? So B.R. Chopra is important. Why is B.R. Chopra important? Because he asked this question in pre-1960s. But later, when he made Insaf Ka Taraju, right, he opened a new important question that judiciary is not sensitive when it is handling a rape case. Right? The type of questions asked makes it impossible for any women to go to court to ask for justice. You think B.R. Chopra ended there? He didn't end there. In 1980s, he made the film Nikah, which asked a question about triple talak. And that movie can be considered to be a milestone or a turning point where the debate continued. So what happened? 1983 Nikah, 1985-86 Shahbanu case, right? 1985-86 Shahbanu case kept on lingering, argument, fight. So that in 2090, 1890, you have a judgment or a legislature passed which says that people talak is wrong, right? The merits and demerits of this can be discussed, right? And debated. But the question what is being asked here is, a film story maker asked a question, and that question led to a social change, right? So the power of Bollywood cannot be undermined if you take this into account. So again, the storyline is at every point in history or every timeline, there has been some movies which have asked questions and led to either some change or it has documented the problem there, because the 1980s or late 70s, early 80s had this problem of violence against women, and there was no answer to it. So this violence against women led to in 1980s films like Arun, right, etc. And the problem was that there was no solution given by Bollywood, and that you can argue is one of the shortcomings of Bollywood. Bollywood has really given a solution. For example, it talked about corruption. It gave a solution in India that enter the parliament or enter the legislative assembly and shoot at you. Right? That's hardly a solution, right? And similarly, the same thing happens in Andhra. Right? Okay, the judiciary cannot do it, so let's kill each and every member. And this becomes heightened in Akela when Amitabh Bachchan is a police officer. See, even then it was just the hero who's agreed and going and killing. Now it's the police officer who's advocating, listen, I've done it, right? I tried to bring about justice, I can't do it. So the next thing is, Nale ke paas le jo, goali maro, Nale mein chal. So the point is that in 1980s, the question of judiciary came up. Now this is important. Now why is it important? जब नेशन बिल्डिंग के बारे में बात हो रहा था, तो फिल्में आया था, इसमें गाना था, जिसमें टीचर को बहुत अच्छा दिखाया, right? There was this आओ बच्चों को मैं दिखाएं जाके हिंदुस्तान की, where basically it's about telling the students about the glory of your country. Then there was another song which says हम लाए हैं तूफान से किसी समान पे. So again, it's about telling the students about that this and what a freedom struggle battle against the Britishers. We brought our country to this point. Now please look after it. And this becomes important because 1960s was marked as the dangerous decade. Why dangerous decade? Because we had war with China, 62. We had a war with Pakistan, 1965. Nehru died in 64. We had a prime minister because Nehru lasted for 17 years. Right? And then Lal Bahadur Shastri came and went in 2 years. So it was a total decade of turmoil. So it was a dangerous decade. So all this was important in that context that this song, so he's saying that, listen, this is a dangerous decade, you have to look after the country first. And there were other things also, where हिंदू बनेगा ना मुसलमान बनेगा इंसान भी औलाद है इंसान बनेगा, right? Where again the aftermath of partition के बाद फिर से riots होना लगा था 1960s. There was a lot of riots in India during the 1960s. So again there was a question that why are you fighting over your religion, right? So the teacher is doing this, right? And then Arun as a child actress in that open school, I'm forgetting that song, right? There also, right, the teacher is shown as a good, wonderful human being and idealistic, leading the children to the future. But point after 1960s, come to 1980s, the teacher is shown to be a joke, right? With Mohan Jyoti is getting angry because the teacher is sleeping right in front, and बच्चे शोर मचा रहे हैं, तो मोहन जोड़ी song किसी कंधे में बहुत से की लड़ाई तो right. So the point is that Bollywood showed the duration of the teaching profession. That was 1960s to 1970s. And importantly, 1980s when it showed Insaf, Raju, approach, etc. And it even went on to Mohan Joshi Hazarho, where an old couple go to court every day, literally every month, because of their property, and the lawyer keeps on getting richer, right? But they don't get justice. So 1980s questioned the judiciary, right? For example, Anda Kanun also talks about the Kanun being Anda. It questions the judiciary, right? And again, it doesn't offer any solution. But 1980s, it does talk about the judiciary. And in fact, it actually shows that judiciary ठीक है, law ठीक है, वकील बहुत था, right? So anyone who has ever been involved with a court case will tell you कि मैं अपना वकील के पास गया था तो पहले 50 रुपये में आता था, 10वां हियरिंग में वो मारुति 800 में आया, अभी 50वां हियरिंग है वो मर्सिडीज में आते हैं मिल के जाता है, right? So you can well understand how Indian judiciary is working, and no one has addressed this problem until now. In 1980s में सवाल उठा लिया गया था. It is only in recent years, right, in the last 10-15 years, that Bollywood stories have even questioned the judges. Right? Politician and police को 1975 से question करने लगे. Right? So if you look at the Haq Satya, etc., they have already questioned the bureaucrats, they have already questioned the police and the politicians. Luckily, the Indian Army and the judges were left out, but present day Bollywood movies are questioning the judges also. So now if you say that the Bollywood का आदत है ऐसे ही करना, I'm sorry, 1960s से each profession they have sounded a warning bell that this profession is going to the dogs. Please prepare it. They do not have a solution. Like I said, the solution has been idiotic. Unfortunately, Bollywood is a whistleblower which blows a whistle but doesn't give a solution, right? So it has been blowing the whistle, and the present whistle is actually judiciary. So if you map it, this is one of my arguments and one of my closing arguments that if judiciary is going wrong and Bollywood is pointing it out, find a method to repair it. If you don't find a method to repair it, then like the other professions which have gone out of hand, this will go out of hand, right? So as you can see, this development can also be seen from the social films also. For example, the films of 1960s were The Hedge, right, which came in 1950, Avara 1951, Seema 1955, Do Aage Barahat in 1957, Mother India 1957, Tool Ka Fool 1959, right? Now, why these are all important is Avara, Do Aage Barahat, made by Raj Kapoor and V. Shankar, attacks a question which was very clear during our post-independence years, that इंसान खराब नहीं होता, उसका हालात उसे खराब बनाते हैं, right? And if you are able to correct or give a chance for people to correct, they will become good citizens, right? So as you can see how we have moved. अकेले आ जाते हैं, ये सुधरेगा नहीं, गोली मार के नाले में फेंको, अगला सुबह पर नामा कर दो, हो गया काम. So we moved that much in 50 years that people are corrected, right? So the social argument was that we have a social work to do. There are people who are downtrodden and we have to work for them. And from that, you come to 1957 when Gurudev makes Pyasa. So Pyasa marks a very important phase. It marks the end of Nehru's clock. Nehru के बारे में नहीं सुना था, से नेहरू भी गलती कर सकते, right? For the example in Pyasa, there is a song, जिन्हें नाच है जिन पे वो कहाँ, right? So he's directly asking the Prime Minister, you keep on talking about your India, where is that India, right? And when he's talking or singing this song, he's actually walking in a red light area. So, if you believe that post-independence will bring about a social revolution, right? 47 का 57 हो गया, 10 साल हो गया, कहाँ है वो social revolution का रिजल्ट? So, for the first time, Nehru is being attacked by Bollywood, and this attack goes on, right? But obviously, like anything, you will have some people who will object, some people who will agree. So when Nehru died, there was obviously a wonderful movie that sort of had a song, Nihal 1967. Mary Abbas's song was there, which had to be produced of Teen Movie, etc. So Bollywood did show respect also. So it's fair game. Then the people ask questions and people celebrated the person. But now comes post 1960s. And post 1960s, things change. Right? Things change, the government is questioned. And what happens after 1960s in this country? You can well understand from this, the social changes that were taking place or the type of movies that were being made. For example, Shekhar or Sapna came in 1963. It's about a couple moving around a city looking for a house. It was not very popular in 1963. Housing was not a very big problem in 1963. But the fact that we had moved from rural area to urban area, the population was moving from rural area to urban area, was becoming important in 1960s. So, urban area में आओगे तो घर ढूंढोगे, घर ढूंढोगे तो घर मिलना मुश्किल, right? This became more successful when it was shown as a movie called Arun. So there was this wonderful song, "Modi Wale Shahar Mein," right? The husband wife worked from 9 to 5, but not really was Bombay Shahar Mein. We were not thinking that movie. So it was actually they were not husband wife, let me correct it. So they were just right. So the social aspect, as you can see, changed from Do Biga Jami, which was talking about the farmer, right, the Dahej, right, the problem with society about dowry being given, etc. It moves now to problems of the city, right? There was another wonderful movie, pre-1960s, Neech Nagar, which talks about about socialism, where the rich man lives on top of the hill and the poor people live below the hill. Neech Nagar, right? And Neech Nagar.
नीचा नगर
Right, and the point was, what he does is he makes a new bathroom and he, let's say, opens silver line go to from his house to the poor man's colony. Right, so pictorially that was represented, that was in the rural area. That was pre-60s. Now post-60s, kahani badal gaya. No one's really bothered about villages. It's more about urban housing system, etc. And that also was reflected in other movies also. Goody, 1971, there talks about a teenage crush for an actor. Crush, right? Something one did not talk of in 1960s or post-independence. Mera naam Joker. Crush for a student to his teacher, right? 1960s, 47 to 60s, I said that was ever thinkable, right? And then Bobby, teenage love, cheese, right? 30 of them falling in love with the widow, right? Abhiman, husband-wife relationship problems. Gaurav Adarsh, right? And then Najan Rai, which demanded sex education in school. So this is post 1960s. So see how social values changed, right? अब वो rural area का कहानी खत्म, के अब आज के stories खत्म, अब इस urban life which is coming into picture, right? And 1960s also was important because Raj Kapoor introduced the storyline of dacoits, right? जिस देश में गंगा बहती, उसके बाद dacoits से एक लंबा स्टोरी लाइन बना, बहुत सारे स्टोरीज बने 1960s, after 1960s. So the point is, it doesn't fit in my storyline, So I'm not keeping it here. But what I'm trying to say is that again, it became important because there was a problem of records. And it was during Arun Singh's chief ministership in Madhya Pradesh that ultimately came to a stop. Right? The Lieutenant Governor of Delhi, when he was a civil servant, he was there in Madhya Pradesh when this was stopped. So that was late 70s. Right? So these were things that were happening. So this also had a movie in that period, Roti Mota or Mata. Right? If I can just tell you the date. This came in 1974, and around the same time, Janjeer also came out, 1973. So, what is the importance here? The importance here is, after 60s, and the developing dangerous years, Indira Gandhi was getting her foothold. 71 बहुत भी हो गया था, बांग्लादेश भी जीत गया था, और the statement that Indira is India, India is Indira भी हो गया था. Then what happens is Indira Gandhi gets too big for the police. She starts becoming a dictator, or she believed that whatever she said had to be told along. The country at that time was seeing serious opposition to the leadership. Gujarat, their students revolted for her. Students were against her. All these guys, Amit Shah, etc., came into prominence during that period in students' politics, etc., etc. I mean, not Amit Shah per se, I'm talking about the BJP, etc., really came into focus during that time. George Fernandez became a big leader because he was the union leader of Indian Railway. He also was against the government, right? You know the socialist movement that came around in that time, and this was the prelude towards emergency, where it was becoming more and more impossible for Indira Gandhi to control. Now, why I came to Makan is that it's a story about three brothers, right? One goes on to become a smuggler, right? And one of them who's an idealist, during his father's funeral burns his graduation degree. The point is that he says that this degree hasn't given me anything, says better do for it, right? And on the other hand, 1973, Janjeer was about an honest police officer who tries to be honest, but is not allowed to be honest, and he's suspended on suspicious charges, etc. And he wants to gain his honor back. So then comes about the angry young man. Who is this angry young man? He is a guy who wants to lead an honest life, but the system has been subverted to such an extent that now you cannot be honest. Even though the film Aksar came later, not in this 1970s time, Om Puri is shown to be a very honest officer who is fighting against one of the local dons, and ultimately what happens is his senior officer makes him a security guard for the don. Right? So a dialogue at the इसका कुत्ता बना दिया है, right? Because security guard standing in front of the door is like standing as a dog. So this period where you have him, the young honest graduate who's looking for a job in society, angry against the system. And this angry young man actually went to Amitabh Bachchan, not just because of his acting, but because of the story tellers Salim Javed also wrote stories which were basically about one man taking the system. Right? Again, it was not a solution, but that was how Bollywood reacted, that one man against the system. And then emergency came about. During emergency, obviously, no one had the guts to make any movies on Indira or emergency for that matter. Because of the political clout and anyone would be thrown into jail without any fair trial, etc. So that period, what did Bollywood do? It moved away from all this, right? It moved away from commentary on social issues, etc. And it started doing questions about, human relations, like I said, Abhiman, husband wife relationship. Because that relations are genuine, that doesn't annoy any particular party. So they started making films. And then after 75, right, this emergency came about. The storyline became how corruption has set in our system, right? How corruption has to be dealt with, how corruption has to be handled, etc. And because of that, the nexus between politicians and gangsters became important. So you had movies like Dawn 1978, right? Naikar 1987. Munjim and 1988, Kalia 1981, Arjun 1985 and Shiva 1990. Again, if you look at this storyline also, you'll see that gone from smuggling to Shiva, politics in campus.
Arjun was before Payal.
85, Arjun was 85. Right? So, why I think talking about Arjun here is not Payal is because see the shift from 78 dollars where he's a smuggler out and out trying to make money. Right? When you come to Arjun, he's an unemployed graduate who gets involved into politics, thinking that he can make a difference in politics. But he ends up like a gangster. And then comes Shiva. He's a student who wants to go to college and study, but just because there is a guy who is involved in dirty politics, he says enough is enough, and his response to that gunda makes him a bigger gunda. Right? So again, the shift is basically from 1975 to 1990. It's showing liberation, but it's showing how it is percolating in society from politics to college in students' life. Right? So this was one thing that you could make out. And then you had in police an honest police officer, but always tied up. For example, Diva Shashi Kapoor, 1975. You had Shakti, where Dilip Kumar was an honest police officer, 1982. But then he had to kill his son, who goes on to become a smuggler. And why Amitabh Bachchan becomes a smuggler is because he feels that being honest father in police doesn't pay enough. So what's the point in becoming an honest police officer? It's better to become a smuggler. So the last scene is about Dilip Kumar shooting his son. You can stay comic from Mother India, etc. etc. Then Tara Tata Gore Law 1986. Again, I talked about in 1991. There are other advocates that encounter Karna Charas. And then you had Kotwal Sahib in 1977, again where there is an honest officer who is shot by the criminal because of the fact that he's not malleable or he's not malleable. So as you can see, during the period you again have the same story. Honest police officer, not malleable, not malleable. Till the end, police chor se bada chor, right? So that again is reflected in that kind of society. And politics again, just to give my argument, politics में आज का MLA राम होता, right? Rajesh Khanna, his words, right? They used to say anything and everything for a exchange of cash. New Delhi Times, where there is an honest editor, Shashi Kapoor, but gets so involved that he doesn't understand who's wrong and who's right. And by the end of the movie, he realizes that in his attempt to be honest, he wrote a story which was actually wrong. The player was someone else, showing the complexity of how politicians play. That what you see is not what the politician actually is playing. So it's not a linear game for the politician, right? And then came Ugly Person, right? Ugly Person also is about the fact that the criminal has to take political nexus. The politician and the criminal are always together. And then social issues, like I said, from rural to the city. Now look at what the social issue is. After old age parents, children not looking after them, 1983, right? Saransh, Bombay, old age parents, son gone to America, dies right? And the two couple, that is the husband and wife don't know what to do, right? That was Anupam Khetar's first movie. Then comes Silsila Arth, which talks about a more mature triangle between married men and women. And then you had Ishwar. Ishwar was a South Indian movie made in Hindi, which had a very interesting aspect where not so high IQ Anil Kapoor asked questions, why is she treated differently, right? And mother says she's a widow, that's fine. So ultimately he asks, ki widow kya hota? So mother doesn't have any answer and says ki मांग में सिंदूर नहीं है. बस इतनी सी बात. Right? So it's again a very simplistic attitude, but it really makes a mockery of what you are making things out to be. Right? It's a widow, she doesn't lose her life, and why treat her or isolate her? That was the question asked. So now, as you can see, then there was June, right? That is pregnancy before marriage, right? And so all this, as you can see, changed how society was being viewed, right? So this was what 1990, right? And post 1990. So I call this the lost year. Why lost year is because on the onset in 1984 in Congress 100-year speech, Rajiv Gandhi made some wonderful comments. इसमें एक बहुत अच्छा कमेंट था कि हम दिल्ली से ₹1 भेजते हैं 15 पैसे मिलता है, आखिर में 15 पैसे मिलता है. So he identified the problem, but like Bollywood, he did not have a solution to the problem, right? And if you look at the text of his speech that day in Bombay, he actually identified all the problems that we even today are solving. So the guy who wrote the speech was a wonderful guy. Right? I'm not going to even give credit to Rajiv Gandhi for writing that speech. But the point is, he identified the problems. But the solutions have taken a long time coming. And if we had done what we were supposed to do in 1991, in 1984, we would have saved a lot of time. So that's why I call it the lost years, right? Because there were many corrections that had to be done. Parveen Raj was an ego problem for Indira Gandhi. She could not have left Parveen Raj, even if she had won the election again in 1985. But she died unfortunately or fortunately, whatever. Again, I will not go into that detail. But what happened was that Rajiv Gandhi was able to make it clean start or a new start. But while he did that, in the first year, like in education, he started from education ministry, he made it MHRD, which means that now you identify us as resource, right? But instead of resource and developing the resource, unfortunately, years were wasted in just giving nomenclatures and nothing else. Let me give you an example of the nomenclature and the argument. Subsequently, Tare Zameen Pe and 3 Idiots came out, right? Both movies questioned the present education system, or at least the education system that was present, right? And those two movies were able to push about certain amount of change. Now, obviously, my generation and maybe generation that is before me might question these changes, right? But the point is, change is inevitable and it's also good. It might be wrong, it might be right, but at least you have to try to do something different. Right? So, I guess I have audio enough, because after this then comes the changes that we see after 1990, which I call the reboot years. And in reboot, obviously not only the financial institutes went on to reboot, our society also went on to reboot. So if you look at it, movies showed the hero heroine either in New York or in London, right? etc. And then Australia, Salam, Namaste, etc. So Indians became good, right? In the reboot years, Indians became globally here, related local, and our problems and our social representations now have become different. Right? So that's what I'm going to do. So I hope you understood that this book is what I told you. It's not about just how a movie is made or what movies are, etc., etc. It's about you can read between lines, right? You can take stories, and if you place them around the time that the movie was released, you will also appreciate the history of the diagram. Thank you.
I think we can open the floor for questions, comments, criticisms.
Yeah, I just want to make a few observations. One, I think it was a brilliant presentation, and he touched on so many dimensions of Bollywood movies. And correctly, because he just asked me, just आप बताइए history वाले टीचर सही बोल रहे हैं कि नहीं? Definitely, with a Bollywood movie for that matter, any movie or cinema as such, it reflects the time of that what we call contemporary time, and it also throws very bold, let's say, bold themes, yeah, which how the society accepts later. For example, I'll come to this. For example, this what was this movie? Donation. What is that? No. I'm talking about this Ayushmann Khurrana's first movie. Big Donor. Now that's a very bold movie, but it is true to the audience to think about it. It did garner a lot of criticism, but that is theme. When we accept, okay, something like otherwise we wouldn't have never talked it in public.
So was Lamhe was well before that. Lamhe?
Yeah, Lamhe. So what he was saying, it's a great work that he's done, and in fact I have not watched so many movies, and he's worked on, he studied so closely the songs also. He was taking the name of the songs and which hero has really worked on it. And rightly he said, just after independence when India was partitioned and there were so many sectional and segmented country, the country at the time needed to bring the people together. The main project of our leaders at the time was that how to build this new nation which had just taken birth. And at that time this heritage building was such a big project, and the name of the pictures he's taken, they really worked on it, and since Jawaharlal Nehru, and I'm so glad he made it so clear to the students how this whole Nehru period, at that time these movies, they really brought these issues, all of them, the names he's taken, and he talked about whether establishing the heavy industries or the land, and these were the things that Nehru is the temple of New India, and his whole journey through this 5-year planning and socialism, these movies and these Raj movies are basically all social. If you go to Russia, everyone remembers Raj Kapoor, everyone will sing Awara song and all. So that is explained and he's brought up. And in fact, I want to learn from him that okay, fine, these are some of the movies I want to see it. And not beginning, he's taken so many dimensions that I will not go into that. He rightly portrayed this whole post-independence period. Then he talked about this 1970s, rightly said that was the time when the youth was so disillusioned because there was unemployment, gender crisis, and those movies which he named, मैंने फिल्में जरूर देखी है, पर मुझे इतना याद नहीं क्योंकि मुझे कभी सोचा ही नहीं था इसके बारे में जिस तरह से बोल सकते हैं. तो एक तो ये, then he talked about also the judiciary system. By that time, people were disillusioned with the judiciary system, जिसको इतना धूमधाम से came to the society. तो वो सारी फिल्म्स बहुत अच्छी तरह से अरुण ने बोला. Arun has also talked about this whole question of caste, where some of the Sujata was one of the beautiful example of how the lower caste should be accepted, how it should be accepted, and it prepared the society, the people that it can be accepted. Because cinema, to me, maybe I have never thought whether it gives solution or not. But when he was using this term again and again, solution, I also was thinking that whether it really gives solution or not. But I always understood, and I see it as a very, very important medium to see that it is a reflection. It is a reflection, and also it sets a trend. That is, I find it very, 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 very important. Sets a trend. Now, as far as solution is concerned, I really need to think in that line. Now, when he was talking about the women or the gender issue, really, he had, in fact, I think maybe you've mentioned in your work or whether did you do with this prostitutes and all, because there's a whole phase where they with movies with Chandra Tagore and all, where they try to bring this category in the media, in audience, to define how do you see address this category as such, and you have line of movies, ek ke baad ek movies aapne. So the gender question also, how it progressed and went through, and you took that also very well. I don't know whether you've taken up that, because when we do revolutionary movements and there's whole 70s when there's so much of disillusionment and angry, that is also one side. Besides the mainstream films that Amitabh Bachchan are doing, there is also an aspect where the revolutionary or in Bengal. I've seen some Bengali movies where this Naxal movement has been portrayed and violence in that. I don't remember Hindi movie there might have been. And then
Azab question.
एक फिल्म एक दौर था जिसमें मजदूरों का भी काफी दिखाया गया था, हाँ, जो पूरा जो लेबर मूवमेंट एंड ऑल, हाँ, मजदूर है ना, so that's why I'm saying these include so many dimensions which I just wanted to say that correctly और बिल्कुल सही है, जो इनका तुमने पूछा था कि सही बोलने के लिए I accept the पूरा और बहुत I was very surprised that he has taken up many issues, being a physics teacher, छोटा सा काफी दिया हुआ है, और मुझे लगता है कि modern period में जो पूरा transgender वाला है, we have a lot of films on transgender and which is after 2000 which is picking up. और regional movies में this is one thing I noticed that in the 1990s when the Mandal Commission was taking place, there are a lot of movies where this issue was also addressed. So that is बहुत देर हो गई, so obviously I'm not going to take your time. Everyone is leaving with answer. So thank you so much, Arun, and
I'm curious, I'm not from movies, very well. So, what is the influence of the regional language on the Hindi movie? For example, as she was mentioning, because if I see, I will say about Bengali movies because I watch them. Many things actually appeared earlier, and many things were remake by Bimal Roy, for example. I know 2-3 movies. So, how do you see that? How the society was influenced? Whether it happened in regional first, than in the northern India, or especially in the southern movies and the eastern movies, which actually influenced?
See, if you look at history of the movies, 1970s, 1960s, there were a lot of Bengali directors who had moved from Calcutta to Bombay, and they took up stories from Bengali literature, Devdas being the biggest example.
Even Dvibigha Jamin, that's originally...
वो socialist idea में रखा था. But if you look at Devdas, right, Devdas again never talks about the Jamindari system and the Jamindar family that he comes from. It's just about the person's inability to make a decision. I mean, रात के 12 बजे girlfriend comes and says, let's run away, and this guy can't make a decision. In early 1900s, if a girl comes and is ready and the boy cannot make a decision, it's a serious issue according to me. But the point, again, what I'm trying to make is that now, unlike in the days where stories were being picked up from books by Bengali directors and producers, what is happening is scenes and popular stories are being picked up, right? And technology is bringing about a change by which southern language is coming in Bollywood by virtue of either making multi-language movies and releasing it simultaneously. So the fact that Bollywood movies is like the Indian country itself. We have assimilated culture and food from all over the world. I mean, one of the Zomato is very proud to say that biryani is the largest selling food item on Zomato. But biryani comes from Turkey, right? So the point is that we have assimilated, we have been the center point of assimilation from all over the world, and Bollywood is no different. We have stolen scenes, if you want to call it stolen. We have adapted storylines, etc. So by the time you see a movie on the screen, it's already become pan-Indian, right? It doesn't become just a Bollywood story in itself. For example, okay, let's take Ek Duje Ke Liye, 1983. It talks about the Vindhyas divide of north and south.
Yeah.
So again, see, it does address the question. It might not be in large influx, but the flux is always into Bollywood, right? So it's always going to be there. And now, if you look at it, southern movie directors are also present in Bollywood.
Yes.
That assimilation will always take place in India. Whether you want to keep it apna Sanskriti clean, it never works in India.
No, by that argument, then global cinema should have been influencing the Bollywood as well, as
It
you
does.
said.
It
That
does. It does.
So
It does.
do we see any reflection of that in any movies?
Obviously, Salam Bombay there is talking about a boy-girl live-in relationship and she's pregnant and she doesn't want to marry me. Fine, right? Why do I force him to marry me if he doesn't like me? So that is a global reflection of Indian PIOs, right? So, Dil Jata hai. Okay, coming to that. In Devdas, like I said, रात के 12 बजे girlfriend is coming and saying let's run away, and the guy is not able to take a decision. And now flash forward to 2000, Dil Chahta Hai, the girl is getting married and he walks into the marriage ceremony and says, listen, I love you, can you come with me? So see the change, and that's an Australian influence on the youth, if you want to ask what global influence has taken place.
Not just that, that scene in Sholay, when, in the backstory, when Gabbar Singh comes and shoots the family, is more or less a copy-paste of Sergio Leone's Once Upon a Time in the West, where the same thing happens, the same silence, the same kid running out, and that Gabbar sitting. So the very movement of film.
Sholay was a pick-up from Western movies, जो हॉलीवुड में 1950s में चलता था. Influence है.
एक और थीम तुमने काफी अच्छा लिया जो पूरा ये जो urbanization where you know the people have migrated, large number of people have migrated from village to urban center, and this whole family issues which were and a lot of issues you've been able to pick this up and all.
अमोल पालेकर.
इनफैक्ट 2 फिल्म है, एक ये वाला इसका है, एक दीपिका दीप्ति नॉवल एंड उसका भी है, उसका गाना तो बोल रहे थे, गोविंदा वाला का है, वो 2 फिल्में हैं, बहुत अच्छा.
See, you have to give credit to a movie recently. कौन सा है वो दीपिका पादुकोण and रणवीर सिंह का?
पठान.
नहीं
पठान.
Yeah, Farooq Sheikh was the father.
Oh, that is ये जवानी ये दीवानी.
हाँ, ये जवानी दीवानी.
You know,
रणवीर सिंह.
who's trying for his son to come back, and he knows he's not going to live long, and just because he's a vagabond wants to roam around here, he says okay, and he's not even worried about the fact. So you know, from the fact that there are demanding fathers to a point where you live your life, I'm going to live my life. It's a huge change.
एलियनेशन के बाद ही जा
नहीं, इस संबंध में एक और बात है कि जो समाज में जिस तरह से हमारे जो संबंध हैं उनमें जो बदलाव होते हैं, है ना, किस तरह से सोच बदलती है. अगर आप देखिए शोले और दोस्ताना दोनों ही फिल्में 2 दोस्तों पर आधारित है, लेकिन आप देखिए कहाँ शोले कहाँ ऊंचाई तक 2 दोस्त को ले गए उनके संबंधों को, और कहाँ दोस्ताना में किस लेवल पे आ गए. तो मतलब समाज में किस तरह से हमारे संबंध बदल रहे हैं, ऊपर उठ रहे हैं, नीचे गिर रहे हैं, इनको भी बहुत अच्छे से हमारी जो फिल्में हैं वो दिखाती है ना, क्योंकि दोनों ही 2 दोस्तों की कहानी बनाती हैं.
So without doubt, there is no argument that it does reflect. But only thing is, I said that there is a 15-year period in which you can make classification. Overlap है 15 year का, लेकिन 15 साल में आपको स्टोरी लाइन बदलता रहता है.
भाई SEC, VAC सब 3 डेट्स का आउटपुट है.
We are not concluding that.
Anyway, anything else?
नहीं ऐसा बहुत सारी चीजें मेरे जनाब से बहुत चीजें आ रही हैं, पर तो नया अगला सेशन हम तुम्हारे
सॉन्ग
हाँ, मैं
बताएंगे?
भी गाना याद आ रहा था। हीरो
पिक्चराइजेशन बताओ।
अच्छा, गाना बता रही थी यार। चलो जब अगली बार याद आएगा पूरा माइंड डाउन है, मतलब याद नहीं आ रहा।
Ushay, my question is a little bit more technical. Is that once as the nation goes through its historical ups and downs, one also realizes the changes that happen in the very visualization of the nation. Not only in terms of the way cinema is made, but how we see the world around us. Which, I mean, the kind of division that you made, I also saw that, will you see that the mise-en-scene of the films, of cinema, also somehow replicates that changing visualization of the nation as well? In the way that the aesthetics of cinema, because, I mean, I'm taking a huge leap, not necessarily in terms of color or the technical thing, but the way, for example, Gurudat would get a camera up stage, or in that song, share that thing, Malana, and slightly moves forward in that. And you switch it up with any of the Amitabh Bachchan things where these kinds of ominous shooting in would be reserved for someone like Shakal.
Yeah, right. In my book, I have actually not commented on this particular thing, but I've said that technology has actually spoiled how you show things on the screen. For example, in बाबरे नैन, where किसी को यूं सताया नहीं करते गाने में, the camera is so close to or focused on Raj Kapoor's face that वो बाल का strand जब हवा में उड़ता है वो दिखता है, right? So now pan to the present day movie, you want to show कश्मीर की वादियाँ, तो आपका कैमरा तो पीछे, हीरो 200 मीटर है, वो ऐसे ही इमोशन दिखाने के लिए तैयार नहीं है, क्यों इमोशन दिखाएगा, वो कैमरा में दिखेगा नहीं. अब हीरो हियर, Kashmir here, so now next thing that the director does is 600 character actors, fillers dance करने के लिए. So technology spoiled it. The black and white movie helped it. So the point that I would rather say is that we use technology, and in the process we sort of widened our view without any focus. Right? We talk about things vaguely without focusing on what we are actually supposed to talk. That is being represented on our camera work also. So that's one thing. And maybe something that I skipped was Islamophobia, right? Which is a very
Yeah, I didn't deliberately put it down because I thought maybe you didn't want to speak on that.
No, see, you come, I'll take two poles apart, I will not do the filler part. You start 1950s with Garam Hawa, right? In which the family is settled and makes leather shoes. और अच्छा खासा धंधा चल रहा है. So Balraj Sahni does not want to leave India, and his younger brother is hell-bent कि चलो यहाँ मरने से अच्छा पाकिस्तान चलते हैं. So ultimately the brother goes off, and Balraj Sahni decides to remain in India. And there is this scene that साइकिल रिक्शा वाला और बलराम कहीं जा रहे होते हैं, साइकिल वाला गलती से टक्कर मार देता है किसी को. अनफॉर्चुनेटली साइकिल वाला रिक्शा वाला भी मुस्लिम होता है, तो उसको पिटाई होने लगता है, ऐसे और वो फिल्म एक्चुअली स्टॉप्स विद द क्वेश्चन, व्हाट कैन वी डू टू यू टू इंटीग्रेट यू बैक इनटू सोसाइटी. This is what the question is. What can we do to get you back in society? Now, come later, there is a Paresh Rawal film that came recently, maybe 4 years ago, where it asked the Troy MP question of loyalty. आप इंडियन हो और लॉर्ड्स में इंडिया वर्सेस इंग्लैंड का मैच चल रहा है, आप ताली किसके लिए बजाओगे, राइट? तो अगर आप इंडियन के लिए बजा रहे हो तो वापस जाओ, और अगर इंग्लिश टीम के लिए ताली बजा रहे हो तो यू विल गेट ए सिटीजनशिप. So here the question is asked, prove that you are an Indian. So from the question, what can we do to accommodate you, to the question that if you want to stay here, prove that you are us, is a huge shift, and that is taking place in society, and we have to address that with time. So all this.
Have you incorporated films on partition and
Not much. Not much.
There is, I think, the topic in your book regarding.
Yeah, but see, partition emergency. If you look at emergency, there's hardly 4 movies on emergency. Right, Naswandi, Hindu Sarkar, right, and 1 or 2 like that. And that too.
Partition is a recent movies, more on
But again, it doesn't do justice to that Holocaust. Right? I mean, if you look at what Hollywood did for World War II, Bollywood has not responded to that. Right? Okay.
Anyway, I think we can end here. Thank you so much. I would like to extend a very grateful, very big thank you to Arun sir for
Very interesting,
inaugurating, as it were, this colloquium that we had begun a year ago, so that each of us gets to know what the other person is doing, have a more interactive thing, get the students able to know that your teachers don't only teach, they have diverse interests, they work on research, so that you also get your, most of your NEP batch I think now, 2/3 of the
for all science.
so that you can also get into research and think what are the possibilities.
How many of these movies you have seen?
But anyway, thank you so much. Thank you for the faculty, students for coming in, and I hope that we get to see you.